Hey everybody, we got a bonus video dropping here on the YouTube channel. I am welcoming a dear friend here in a couple seconds of myself and of the show and of the channel to talk about a new project that has just been completed and a brand new book that is out there. We're going to talk about that process with our dear friend. So let's cut right to the chase, right, guys? We're going to bring in our good friend Rachel Yoder. Welcome back to the channel, Rachel.
Hey everybody, Max good.
So, Rachel, let's talk about this new book that you have out. What do you want to tell us about it? Let me guide the conversation, I guess, a little bit. I should be a good host here. Tell us the name of the book and why. What is the book about? And then I want you to tell us, why did you do this? Why did you undertake this project?
Thanks so much for having me on, Doug. It's a pleasure, and I'm so proud of you for how much you've grown. It's really been beautiful to watch. So my new book is called Volksaage, and it is basically a collection of the work that I've done and the journey I've been on over the last 10 years here in the Deutschrei, and particularly in Berks County and Olidau. We moved here about 10 years ago and started exploring different ancestral sites and just generally Berks County. It's so magical. I hadn't spent much time here, though my grandparents lived here and my mom grew up here. We didn't really travel outside of Boyertown when we were here, except to go to the Gasha Happen once in a while and stuff like that. But it was really neat to go to these different places that were ancestral places that my family lived on, and just to sit and be there with that.
It sometimes has an actual spiritual effect, doesn't it?
I don't know. I want to say what I want to say, but it sounds so woo-woo, but I know people kind of have an idea what I'm like, and they kind of understand. It's such a moving and spiritual moment in those moments. So I seek them often, particularly in, surprisingly enough, the cemeteries is a place where I find a lot of rejuvenance in inspiration. Spangsville, Ole Valley, even Boyertown, there's the Manatoni Creek has been a source of great inspiration. The Keim Homestead, Daniel Boone Homestead, we've got some DeTurk relatives over there. The Sacred Oak, of course. So these are sites and places in this very specific location that have inspired my work so much, so deeply. So I wanted to talk more about than just putting out. It was initially going to be some folk stories, but then I decided I really wanted to just be the breadth of this work and really give something back to the ancestors for what they've given to me in bringing me to these places and carrying me through these times and continuing to inspire me. I always talk about when I paint, it's like a dance with the ancestors, because I do feel their spirit with me, and I feel the same way when I visit these places. So it's just been a really exciting time. So it's kind of set up a lot like my Instagram or Facebook, and it's just little snippets of process work, also finished work. I had a couple shows in there at Firefly and also Clay on Main during this time period, and also photographs of the Ole Valley and these places, these very special places to me and my family, that my family's been, swimming in the Manatoni Creek for like 300 years. So it's really, really cool. We go back to the Fisher Homestead and just the whole area. If you're familiar in this area, it's just such a magical place. I know Chris over at the Daily Antiquarian, he has said that the way I talk about Ole Valley is very palpable when he comes here. It's just a very, very sacred and special place.
I think for most Pennsylvania Dutch, we all have that place wherever that is, whether it's the Ole Valley or the Blue Mountains of northern Berks County or up in the Alamangel up by Kempton and all that. So, I mean, I understand, even though, and I do have ancestral roots in the Ole Valley, similar with some of ours are the same roots, but have some other ones too that are different from you. And then I have a lot of really deep roots in the northern Berks County area, and I know exactly what you mean. It is home for in more ways than just saying it's home. At least I get that draw, and I think a lot of other Pennsylvania Dutch people do too. I get a lot of comments on the YouTube channel here from people exactly saying that, because they've either moved away, and even just by seeing images of this area, it pulls at them even through, you know, a picture on Instagram, or if I reference something in a YouTube video. So, I mean, I think a lot of us who are watching this video can right away relate with what you're saying in regards to there is this whatever it is, this spirit, this power that does pull us to where we come from to a certain extent. So the book is out now, as you said, and we'll have a link in the show notes for everybody who wants to purchase it. But I mean, it's how many pages is it? It's like over 300 pages, isn't it?
It's huge. It's basically like a textbook. It's insane, and it's really been a labor of love. It's kind of like my field notes, I would call it, and also images of my work. But yeah, it's huge. It's 300 and some pages.
But what also is really impressive is like it's all color too. I mean, of course, for your art, for people to see your art, you know, it has to be in color. But sometimes people cut corners, you know, and you can't. But as you guys can see, as Rachel's paging through, I mean, it's just page after page after page of images. And in fact, Rachel sent me a couple, and I want to pull them into the screen here, and you can talk about some of them from the book. Of course, people that follow the channel know that. I mean, we've had Rachel on before. We know the work that she does. She has a bunch of it hanging behind her there in her studio. So a lot of this is, for some of you, you'll be seeing these images again. For those of you that are maybe new to the channel, this will be some new stuff. But we see the cover art of the page of the book, excuse me. And I just pulled some out that I've always liked of your work, and then you can maybe talk a little bit about them. Here are the first two that I pulled up.
So I should rewind a second and just say that it's called Volksaage because it was going to be a collection of folk tales, which is the way you translate folk tales. Yes, Doug?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I always have to rely on my trusty Doug to help me with the translation. But so really, a lot of my work is inspired by folklore creatures of the Pennsylvania Dutch and things that have been taken from Voorschrift and Proctor imagery. And a lot of those would include mermaids, albadrich, you know, I call them ancestral spirit angels. Faces as flowers is a very magical motif that I use a lot. The Ehan, of course. I hope I'm saying that right. Ehan.
The Ahon, the unicorn.
Ahon. See, I didn't say it right.
That's all right. You're close. You're close.
But so, you know, as a child, I always loved folk stories and folk tales. And when I found this connection through my interest in hex science, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole of Proctor, I was just blown away. The other thing that I do that I really like is the Sugar Skull edition of the Faces as Flowers.
Yeah, I have one of those. I think I have one of those coming up. Oh,
nice. I love Frida Kahlo so much. She's my favorite artist, and I just, as an homage to her, yeah, so that's kind of been the inspiration for the actual title. And then the show that I had at Firefly was definitely about folktales. And so these two images, of course, I call it Faces as Flowers. I don't think that's been used before, but these are motifs that have been seen many, many times in Proctor. But I sort of made it a lot larger and sort of it almost feels like you're being hypnotized a bit. But I love these ladies.
If you spun it, it would pull you in, right?
Oh, I have, and I've been pulled in, my friend. But it's funny because I would pick Candace Perry's brain over at the Schweinkflutter, and she's been so good to me, my sweet, sweet Candace, and say, what do these mean? What do these mean? You know, always looking for like a 21st century explanation for this. And she said she felt it sort of was a memorial to someone that had passed. So I love that idea of, you know, you'll know what to say, Doug. Salt to dust or dust to dust or something, like you come from the earth and you go back to the earth, you know?
Yeah, right.
You'll have something wonderful to say for that, but I can't think of anything at the moment.
No, that's good.
To be poetic about it, but I always, you know, we're very much woo-woo in like our garden is a living part of our home and a very important sacred part of our home. So I always think of the faces of the flowers because, of course, our gardens are living things as well, and so that's one of my favorite.
And they continue us to live too. I mean, that's what people always, you know, you can't live without it, right?
Absolutely, it's our favorite time of year.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to the store so much.
That's right.
BLTs all the time.
So let's talk real quickly about these two images.
Yeah, so this is what I call the Big Mama Hex. And this is, I don't really paint that many hex signs, believe it or not.
Right.
The ones that I do are more Proctor based and inspired by Proctor, but this is a very favorite motif of mine. I find the rosette in the middle to be very sacred. The rosette, of course, the flower of life, and it's used in so many different cultures for so many of the same reasons. So that's always at the center of what I'm doing, whether it's painted there or not. The flower of life is very secret. And then I'm a big fan of Frances Licton, and I hope I say her last name properly, but she was a scholar. Am I saying it right, Douglas?
I honestly don't know. I
Okay.
honestly don't know.
Well, she was a scholar mid-century, but she was also an artist, which, you know, it really speaks to me because I'm, you know, much more an artist than a scholar. But she would actually go around and sketch out like things that were on chests and stuff, and sort of take an inventory of these different motifs. So she has this wonderful collection of books where these sketches and shows you these different motifs and then kind of gives an explanation. She's the only person that I've ever seen in print give any explanation for the weirdo mermaids that I adore so much.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's really interesting. I know Don Yoder spoke about it at the Free Library years and years ago because Hunter saw him speak about it, but it was never that I have found in print, like an explanation, why do we use these mermaids? So she had a couple of sketches and I kind of combined them to create this. And it just felt like one of those designs that just clicked and felt very, very powerful and very much coming from somewhere other than myself. So this is, I call it the Big Mama Hex because, you know, we all love the Big Daddy Hex. Johnny Ott, shout out to Johnny Ott, who he designed. It's an amazing hex sign. I love it so much. Very colorful. And I remember visiting the Pennsylvania Dutch Gift House in Charlottesville, and they had this huge Big Daddy Hex outside that you could take a picture with. I don't know if you remember this.
Yes, I do.
I took a picture. I took a picture with it. I guess it was maybe like 2018, 17. And I thought, oh, you know, there should be a Big Mama Hex, you know. It's hard out here for us lady hex sign painters, but I see a lot of them, more of them coming up. So I'm very proud and very excited to see that representation. But it was just a play on words. And I love Johnny Ott so much. And with all due respect, he was a wild painter too. I don't know if you've been over there to Dijek and seen some of his wild work.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have.
I love his work. So
speaking of motifs, I mean, we can't talk about Pennsylvania Dutch without groundhogs. So I know you've done a bunch of different groundhog images. Here's just two of them that are in the book, of course.
Yes, these are the seasons of Grunsaw. I love these so much. These are actually my two favorite. I did 4 for each season, and this would be spring and summer. Summer?
Summer.
And so these were 2 of my favorites. I did this series and just depicting the groundhogs in the different seasons, of course. That was just really, really fun. People love groundhog. I mean,
I know they do.
Such a hugely, wildly popular motif. I had no idea what I was getting into, and it's just paid it forward so much. They're just so sweet and just lovely little creatures.
Good. Here's referencing what you referenced before. Here's showing what you referenced before with the top left-hand corner image. So a mixing of motifs, I guess we could say, a little bit of Pennsylvania Dutch with Frida Kahlo, which is, I think, is awesome. Yeah. And some more traditional stuff there too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been obsessed with skulls. I don't know. I just love that motif. You know, it's just always been something that I've been drawn to. So I kind of mixed that in, and I felt it's also been received really well, which is nice. But yeah, a lot of the folk art, like the Mexican folk art, there, of course, with all folk art, there's a lot of thread lines. So I felt kind of represented both for me and was really special to me. If you look below, that's another angel motif. And then I'll substitute different flowers and stuff. So sunflowers are my favorites, and you'll see those there. And of course, the distelvink and our very important tulips.
Yep.
And a sawtooth border with some tulips as well. So yeah, it's just kind of a book of a collection of the different work that I've done and sort of my journey. And you can see it kind of go through different explorations. So this is a Triskel or Triskeline. And I'm also half Welsh. So this was something that I was painting for that part of me and sort of bringing that into my work as well, which is kind of...
I think it's important for the Pennsylvania Dutch people also to understand that, like, we have our symbols, but every culture has symbols that they can relate to. We, you know, for us, maybe we see a hex sign and we can say that's us, or a groundhog or something. And then I think it's so important for us to also see what other cultures, like, you know, in the Celtic tradition, what imagery for them pulls at them. You know, I think that's always cool to see from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Doug, having worked at the Schweinfurter, I learned so much that there are so many Welsh and Pennsylvania Dutch mix-ups, mashups, and also Irish, Scotch-Irish Dutch. And there's just, you know, just Pennsylvania Dutch doesn't just necessarily mean like from Germany, but it's also like multiple cultures. And I think that really speaks to people when it's brought into the artwork as well, because it feels even more like home. It just like elevates it, you know. And it's also a super magical symbol, so it kind of works like the flower of life. And of course, Freilichkeit. I don't know.
Freilichkeit.
Okay, well, this is an interesting story. Of course, we have the double-headed eagle, which is very traditional Pennsylvania Dutch design. I added the tulips that I sort of like. They're like sort of my signature, and the rosette, of course, like I mentioned before. But this is a word I learned from Brad Smith. Sorry, I was thinking Robert. From Bradley Smith. He taught me this word, and when he talked about it, I was weeping because it's such a beautiful word, and he thinks of that word when he thinks of his favorite Pennsylvania Dutch word. So can you kind of explain, Doug, because I'll mess it up. I know it's like joy. So much.
I mean, yeah, so Freilichkeit, if you look it up in a dictionary, it would say joy or even happiness to a certain extent, but much more this idea of joyousness. So you will see Freilichkeit. I mean, when the Pennsylvania Dutch get together and they're having a really good time, whether it's a party or a picnic or, you know, whatever, and people are having a really good time, then that's Freilichkeit. And it goes of course, it has a deeper meaning than just the word joy. You know, it has there's this emotional aspect tied to it too. You know, in German they have a word called Gemütlichkeit, which is similar to this in the sense that like when you feel gemütlich, that means like you're so comfortable in having such a good time that you feel comfortable. Like restaurants and hotels will advertise themselves as gemütlich. So, you know, in Pennsylvania Dutch, we could think like if you're running a restaurant or a brewery or something, and you want to have this idea of like, if you come here, you're gonna have a really good time and you're gonna feel good, then maybe we would advertise it as we have Freilichkeit or something like that. No, it's a great word. It really is. Yeah.
Just within the context of how the story he was telling, and I was just like, oh my gosh, Brad, it was a beautiful word. So I just wanted to encompass that word. I have a Welsh word like that I use as well.
Okay, yeah.
So it's very cool.
It's not just painting that Rachel does, and she also highlights this in her book. And I wanted to pull this picture out because this is one of my favorites. And you can talk briefly about this dress real quickly.
Yeah, so this is the Kime Homestead, like I mentioned before, again in the Ole Valley. It's a very, very magical place. It's a very cool place. Okay, so I went to Kutztown for graduate school for communication design, which is basically graphic design and typography. And this was one of our, I think it was called like alternative typography or something. And I wanted to, in the voice of my great grandmother, Verna Fisher, to kind of write myself a letter from her voice about the work that I was doing. So with Doug's help and Joyce Hassler, I think, actually recorded it, speaking it, I was able to create this beautiful typographic Scherenschnitte out of, it was like the most wild thing I've ever done. Out of canvas, I printed it out on canvas and then cut it all out and then like hung it on a dress. And it was really, really beautiful in person. And it would catch the light in certain ways. And it just felt very, very magical and definitely connected to Verna. And very recently, a cousin of my mom said how much she was very, very close with Verna, how proud she would have been. So that means a lot to me, because that's why I'm doing this work, you know?
No, it's the same reason, one of the main reasons I'm doing the work that I do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's one last image I want to share with everybody, and we can talk briefly about this. So for those of you that are fans of the channel and watch regularly, if you remember back in the January episode of PA Dutch Live this year, we talked about a brand new, there was this brand new Pennsylvania Dutch, or another Pennsylvania Dutch flag that was being created to get out there. And we have an image here of Rachel holding the flag. And the reason she's holding is because you were a vital part in the creation of this new design, this new flag. You want to talk just briefly about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with all due respect to the original flag, big Peter Fritsch fan. And of course, my whole family is very, very devout Christians. Rob Schreier and I decided to design an alternate flag, not a flag to replace, but a flag in
Right.
addition, to sort of encompass the larger diaspora and perhaps people that are not on the same Christian path. So it says "Wir sind die Deutscherei" because we are all the Deutscherei, and it was really fun. I designed it. He gave me the sort of idea and the background of what he wanted it to symbolize. And again, you see the rosette as always, and it was really fun. So I did the double-headed eagle again to kind of we wanted to symbolize both paths, like the traditional Christian path of the Pennsylvania Dutch, which is very important to honor because that's why we're all here, really, for religious freedom, the Pennsylvania Dutch, and it's very dear to my heart. And then also the alternative path. Maybe people have taken other paths, but we're all part of the same double-headed eagle.
Yeah, no,
So
right,
it was
right.
it was a really fun project.
And that flag is out there, and I know that they've sold them because I've seen pictures of people that have them at their home and things like that on social media. So that flag is still out there and it's available for purchase for anybody. And it comes in, you can get it in different sizes. We have the size that Rachel's holding in the image that you can actually put on a flagpole, for example. But I know that you can also get like the smaller ones, like people flag like garden flags and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not
and
just
car flags.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, you don't have to get the real big one if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So and that's all available. If somebody wanted to get one of the flags, is that on your website, Rachel?
That's actually on our Zazzle. So I have a Zazzle shop, Rachel Yoder Art, and then we have a separate one, PA Dutch Stuff, but it's all housed under Rachel Yoder Art. So you can find it in the same place that you can find ours.
And the Zazzle link for the shop that I advertise all the time for our PA Dutch stuff, it will be in the show notes as well. So you can click on that, and then you can also link to Rachel's. But I will have a link for Rachel's website and where you can purchase the book that we were talking about today, Volksaage, the 360-page all-color catalog of her work, and it tells the story of the Pennsylvania Dutch through her eyes and through her paintbrushes and pens and pencils and whatever all other objects
all
and
of
tools
the things.
you use, all of the things.
I have a big toolbox.
Yeah, that's great. So Rachel, I'm glad to see the book came out. I know you've already sold a couple of copies, and that's good. And hopefully people watching this video will be enticed to go out there and check that book out. Maybe buy it for somebody else for as a Christmas gift or something like that. And I know that on the website for the book, you can actually see inside the book. So you can, like on Amazon, you can look inside. So you can check it out a little bit more before you purchase it if you're on the fence or whatever. But Rachel, I just want to wish you all the best with the book. It's great to get this. I have a bunch of your art hanging throughout my house, but I don't have all of it. So if you get the book, then you have access to seeing all of it,
exactly.
not just a couple pieces. So we'll have all the links in the show notes for everybody that's interested in learning more about the good work that Rachel's doing, and also to our Zazzle shops if you want to get t-shirts and things like that. But we want to congratulate you on the new book, Rachel, and can't wait to see what else you have coming out down the road.
Thanks so much, Doug. Thanks for having me. It's always so much fun.
My pleasure. All right, take care.
You too. Good Ovid. I'll start with what I should have said in the beginning.
Mock Scoot.
Mock Scoot, everyone.